the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February 27th. First item on our agenda tonight is roll call.
Baraza. Here. Lancey.
Here.
Beck. Here. Pieper. Here. Chanzit.
Here.
Sofa. Here. Wolf.
Here.
Barron. Here. Lehman. Ayazi.
Here.
Malay. Ewer.
Here.
Cerrone. Vogelsinger. So that's 10.
Okay. Alderman Vogelsinger did call in and say she would be here. Or she was on her way, right?
She's on her way.
Okay.
Do we have 8? 10? Good.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, we will move on then to item 2, which is a reminder to speak directly into your very loud microphone tonight. And if you come up to use the podium, just make sure that the microphone lights up and you can hear yourself in the background. Item 3 is approved minutes for January 30th, 2024 and February 19th, 2024 special meeting. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Motion by Jansit, second by Beck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, item 4 is items to be removed, added, or changed. Just because we have a little bit of a delay tonight, we're going to drop item 11. We'll just move that 2 weeks if the mayor can't respond, and several 2 weeks to talk about this.
Moved.
Give me time to calm down.
Second.
Okay, motion by Salfa and second by Ewer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Here we go.
When is that rescheduled for?
What?
Just put in a pause for a couple of months?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Then I won't just go on and cut it down. Okay. Next we have item 5, which is matters from the public for items not on the agenda. Is anybody here for anything not on the agenda tonight? Okay, nobody online. Item 6, which is the consent agenda. Alderman Chanzit, a short
Indeed.
one.
Your Honor, Resolution 24-30-R, that's authorization to purchase a 2024 John Deere. It's a utility tractor with a loader bucket and another John Deere flex-wing rotary cutter. Resolution 24-32-R, authorization to purchase a 2024 MAG. Okay. Asphalt roller, and then ordinance 24-22, declaring certain property to be a surplus and authorizing a sale thereof. Ordinance 24-23, that's an amendment to the official zoning map for R0, single family district to R1L, single family low density district. That's 316 Roberts Lane, 946 and 1012 Main Street, 209, 210, 213, 230, 231, 304, 305, 314, 315, 323, 332, 333, and 342 Evergreen Drive. I would move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
And it's second by Salfa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I would just like to note that the 2 of the pieces of equipment that we're replacing are from 1990. That's pretty amazing.
Good year.
Stuff lasts a long time. All right, move on to item 7, which is resolution 2024-019R, consideration of application for grant funds offered through city's downtown signage assistance program to Subway, 108 North Batavia Avenue, in the amount of $1,000. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Alderman Wolf. All right, this evening, we have Harry Meda on behalf of Subway, who has applied for a $1,000 matching signage assistance grant to produce and install a new building facade sign. The total cost of the signage project is going to be about $10,000, and this does exclude permit fees paid. Should be noted that the property located at 108 North Batavia Avenue is in 2 separate TIF districts. The west side street facing part of the building is in TIF number 3, and the east side of the building is in TIF number 1. Please be advised TIF number 1 will be expiring this year. February 1st, 2024 was the cutoff for the grant applications for TIF number 1. Staff is recommending that the City Council Committee of the Whole approve the attached Resolution 24-019-R awarding a downtown signage assistance program grant in amount of $1,000 to Subway. And before we go any further, I'd like to give Harry an opportunity to speak a little bit about his business and what his plans are for the grant.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Harry Mehta. I own the Shell station. So we are planning to add Subway in there. We currently have Circle K and a Dunkin' as a tenant. So yeah, excited for it.
Have any questions?
It really has been exciting to see Harry grow his business here in Batavia, starting with just the filling station and then adding the Circle K and the Dunkin' Donuts. And, you know, those are both really successful businesses as well. But then to add the Subway to it, we're really happy to see how your business has grown here in Batavia.
Thank you.
Another option for me across the street.
Yep.
Okay.
What's the footprint like? Where does it go?
So as you enter the store, it's going
Right on the
on
outside.
the right on the south side of the building.
Yeah.
Where the cash register used to be.
Right, exactly. And then the sitting area is removed and gas station counter and everything is shifted to the by the windows.
Will you have drive-through for that or not?
No, just the Dunkin' would have
just inside,
drive-through,
okay.
yeah. Subway would be curbside pickup if somebody wants to just sit in the car,
Okay.
or they can, of course, come inside. Yeah. Yeah, if you're ever in the area, stop by. I'll love to
Where
show
were,
around.
where were you back in 1989? I had to sit there and have like cheddar soup when I was waiting for my mom to
That
pick
was
me up for
back
the
in
allergist.
India,
I
at
would have
least.
right ahead Subway.
All right. Yeah, back in India.
He's going to join by Zoom.
Cool.
We have Alderman Lehman here at 7:42. And then it sounds like we're going to have somebody else join on Zoom. All right, I will make the motion that we recommend to council Resolution 2024-19R, consideration of application for grant funds offered through the city's downtown signage assistance program to Subway 108 North Batavia Avenue in the amount of $1,000.
Second.
Motion by Ewer, second by Lancy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And that'll be on our next city council agenda next Monday night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, council.
On to item 8, which is ordinance 2024-011, authorizing execution of a forgivable loan in the amount of $125,000 with the Batavia Artists Association, doing business as Water Street Studios. Scott, you want to go through that? Okay.
Let me admit Alderman Millay is joining us via Zoom. Wait for his- Hi, Alderman Millay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Perfect. Yes,
Good.
thank you
All
very
right.
much.
So we are just beginning discussion of this item for the forgivable loan for Water Street Studios. Water Street Studios came in here several weeks ago and requested of City Council a forgivable loan in the amount of $100,000 and a $25,000 TIF grant. They had some improvements that they want to make to their building and the exterior of the building, the staircase, and upgrade some lighting and redo some floors. And unfortunately, much of the work that they are contemplating is not something that are TIF reimbursable expenses. And so staff's recommendation is that we just do instead of a $25,000 grant and a $100,000 forgivable loan, just make all of it a forgivable loan. So the one aspect of that is that then we cannot use the TIF funds to fund this forgivable loan. It has to come out of the general fund. However, you might recall that with regard to the ARPA funds, that City Council did say that they wanted $200,000 set aside from what the city had received in from the ARPA funds to assist businesses that are struggling to recover from the effects of the pandemic. And so, but we also need that ARPA funding for Carriage Crest. And so Peggy's recommendation was use all of our ARPA funding for our water projects, Mahoney Creek and Carriage Crest, and then just consider $200,000 of our general fund reserves to be that money that we have set aside to support businesses, because it also provides us with, a lot more flexibility in terms of how we utilize those funds. And so as the presentation from Water Street showed, they have been significantly affected by the pandemic. Not being able to have people in their building meant that they weren't able to host their ordinary events. They weren't able to hold classes for the public. At the same time, the personal giving really went down a lot. And then also they had a tremendous amount of turnover in the executive director position. However, now things are on a different trajectory. They have many new members of their board. The members of their board bring expertise in finance and strategic planning. They have a plan for restoring Water Street Studios to financial sustainability, but they're asking for this funding in order to bridge a gap so that they can realize the outcomes that they are seeking from the strategies that they're implementing. And so it's staff's recommendation that we grant Water Street Studios this forgivable loan in the amount of $125,000. And the loan would be payable over the course of 10 years, each year, so long as 75% of the available studios had been leased and did not fall below that for more than a 90-day period. Then in that year, that loan payment and any accrued interest would be forgiven.
So very similar to what we had done when they started.
Exactly.
I believe that's the same terms that we had on it when Water Street started.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions about this? Dan?
I guess this comes down to a definition. The boardwalk shops seem to be a lot of applicants, way more applicants than they could ever have space for. There are quite a few people who discovered their artistic talents during COVID, and there are quite a few artisans out there. I would be surprised if they weren't at 100% occupancy for the next 10 years. I'm just curious if 75 is too low of a bar. Not that I'm trying to make things difficult for them, but I think that they will fill their spaces. I really do. There's nothing but excitement about this project in this building. I think it sends a better message to have a higher number, but I think they will be filled. The momentum is there. The support is there.
Comments?
I guess I'll just make the comment. I mean, it's a good point. Is it enough for what they want to do? I think it's an important, I think it's worth making sure it's enough rather than having to go back and issue more or anything like that. But
I think that from what I understand from people that I've talked to about the board makeup and where they think they're going with this, is that they feel like that's enough to make sure that they are sustainable and then they can sustain themselves within that period, which I think is, to me, within 5 years, I think they'll be at that point, that they will have this backup to where it can run on its own without outside help.
yeah, perfect.
So, and I've always thought about it, with the boardwalk shops, the amount of money that the city put into that, everybody else that volunteered and donated and put that together. These are really well-spent dollars in our downtown that draw people, not just for the classes, not just for the art shows, not just for that, but everything else that's associated with them going somewhere else. You know, while they're here, or wow, I didn't know they had this here, I'll be back tomorrow, next week, whatever. I really see that benefit in what's going on downtown.
Has everyone here taken a class?
Hmm?
I took one of those like one-day classes. It was so much fun. It really was.
One thing we also to keep in mind is they have the offset group where it's the community art group that's going around putting up art inside our community. So I see them connected to that and doing a good thing to the community and drawing people to the area.
Any other comments? If not, I will make the motion that we recommend to council ordinance 2024-011, authorizing the execution of a forgivable loan in the amount of $125,000 with the Batavia Artists Association doing business as Water Street Studios.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Hansit, second by Lehman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, now we will have a presentation on the Batavia Parks Foundation Peace on Earth Selfie Station proposal. I believe Britta is online.
I am. My oldest son told me I had to stay in the basement, so here I am. Okay, so thank you very much for your time tonight. Can you all see the presentation? We've
Not
got
yet,
this.
Britta.
Not yet, you said?
Yes, not yet.
Okay. Oh, all right. I didn't know if you were putting it up. Let me hold on. How's that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Great. Okay, so this was attached, I believe, to the agenda. So I'm going to briefly go through it, and there'll be time for questions. And I believe Laura has a prototype there for you that Blaine dropped off earlier tonight before the sirens blew. So pass that around. So this project was inspired by my trip with my husband to the Sparta Bicycle Trail in Wisconsin, where we came upon this selfie station. And on the left, it shows the selfie station. And on the right is the picture that the selfie took in front of a 1 mile kind of a tunnel that we had to walk our bikes through. But we thought it was such a great idea. I took a picture and I said, I think we need to do that in Batavia. So having finished, of course, our beautiful new Peace on Earth, our new artwork, we thought the Parks Foundation was excited to find a location to put a selfie station. And we've identified this space. And this is the selfie station is actually, the prototype is in place right here. You can't see it when you look at the front of the statue on Wilson Street. But here it is from the back of the statue. You can kind of see the size it is. This isn't the exact sign. This is just a cardboard replica. It stands 18 inches tall by 22 inches wide. The materials, it's got a metal frame and it's got a composite wood look to it. And our fabricator is BRH, Blaine Hines. I actually found him. He's a Batavia Chamber member. And about a year ago, he joined the Chamber and I took note of that. And he's very excited to work with this project. This is the way it looks from the back. If you lift off the lid, right now in the wintertime, Public Works puts a kind of a wooden lid on there to keep the trash out. And it looks like they dig out some of the dirt. And then in May, late May, they put dirt and then they plant the planters. And so the idea would be that we would have metal stakes that go down and that would actually be affixed by Public Works. Scott Haynes met me here at the site to take a look and kind of help us engineer how it might look. Here's a side view. So you can see it's not huge. And the gal in the checked jacket is Katie O'Brien with Katie O'Brien Photography. She's also on our board. So she helped us locate where the right location for the selfie shelf would be to put your phone for the right angle. The schedule that we followed is January and February. I first met with Laura, then I met with Scott Haynes, and then we've met with our metal fabricator, and now we're here with our proposal to you to kind of get your feedback and answer your questions. Provided everything is okay, we need about 30 days to get the sign fabricated after we applied for a sign permit, and then install in May before the flowers are planted. This is a mock-up of the back of the sign. So if you were coming off of Wilson Street, you would see this, unless, of course, there was flowers or foliage covering it. And this is the city of Batavia's new flag design. Blaine, the fabricator, actually came up with this. We hadn't put anything on the back of it, but he put that there as a possible design for the backside of it. One idea is we could also, if this became a prototype of many selfie stations in Batavia, we could do this as the back of all of those to identify that it's another selfie station. A hashtag find your selfie in Batavia. And this is the front of it. And it's got the directions and the little shelf up on the top where your phone sits. This will be funded by the Batavia Parks Foundation. And we're proposing that the city of Batavia partner with us to help install it. It's just a very simple installation into the actual planter. And Scott Haynes said that was quite easy. It would be on your property, but we would be the owners of the signs and would maintain it. And that is what it would look like to take your selfie picture. So I will be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Since it's a nicely sized sign, would there be room to maybe add a little history blurb about where the Peace on Earth Bridge came from, just as an additional opportunity to sort of tell some of the town's history?
Great question. So we plan to actually put a QR code, very much like the Flag Day has QR codes that go to. We're going to do that. We have not put it on the sign yet, but we're gonna write that and then put the QR code so you can scan that on here. Yes.
My one question too, how to be able to connect that to how it got there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Britta. It's Alderman Lehman. I love this idea, and I think it's just such another added benefit to downtown Batavia, just where people are. I mean, my business is right down there, and I'm always seeing people taking photos of the Peace Bridge and taking photos of family members and friends, especially on the weekends when we get more guests coming through town. So I think this is a really lovely idea.
Good. We're
places they belong.
Right. We're proposing a hashtag Batavia Peace Bridge be the official kind of hashtag for this. And as I said, if there's a bigger vision, talking to the Chamber of Main Street about putting a number of these selfie stations around town, we could network them and promote them together as hashtag find your selfie in Batavia. That's just a bigger idea.
Yeah, just a comment. I think it's a great idea. And I was starting to think of other ones like right by the Depot Pond and stuff like that, because that is a big picture place we know as well. So yeah, I would love to see this as a thing.
You can take your damn selfie over here.
Actually, that would be a good one too.
Dan?
Britta, I just want to say this one. Thank you for seeing this idea. And you glossed over this. This is so important. I am too old to take a selfie because apparently over age 35, we think that you have to take them up here to show 1.5 chins, not 2 of them. So the fact that you said that somebody positioned this sign at the exact spot, you guys all look amazing and how you're supposed to look. So a professional young person needs to place these things, and you guys did right by us. So thank you.
Actually, Scott Haynes had said, hey, can we put some, he was like talking about putting footprints where you're supposed to stand too. And I said, well, that's your property. I'm not going to talk about, but that, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. In case in point, yes. If Alan and Leah want to go take a selfie real quick, there'll be a vast difference in what they look like.
I could show you selfies from like the 80s, Dan. I've done that for a long time.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I think it's a great idea. Let us know when the Parks Foundation is ready to get the stuff out there, and we'll get out there and use it.
All right, well, we'll apply for the sign permit. We just wanted to bring it through all the channels so nobody was surprised, because it is your property. You don't want to just have it popping up on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Britta. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, which is 3 planning firms for selection of the South River Street study. And I think Drew's going to start us off here.
Yes, I'll try and be brief since I think everybody's eager to provide your presentations after our delay a little while ago. But we do have before you tonight 3 of our respondents to the South River Street study. This is a item that was in the budget for the South River Street corridor with the intention of being a review of the land uses and creating a study that recommends improvements that could be made to the South River Street corridor. And that goes from not only land uses, as I mentioned, but what the city's infrastructure, roadways, et cetera, should look like, and ways we could induce redevelopment of those areas. And looking also at some of the financial components that could be a part of that, such as SSAs, the TIF districts, or business development districts. So we did issue an RFP request back in September with a deadline of October 20th. We were quite surprised and pleased to receive 11 complete applications or responses to that RFP, which we have first narrowed down to 4 participants and then down to 3 that are before you tonight. The intention is for tonight's setup is to be basically a 10-minute presentation by each group. Followed by each presentation a 10-minute Q&A period where the council can ask any questions of each group. We did, as I noted in the memo, not requested that no decision be made or no real formal discussion occur after these presentations and Q&A discussions tonight, and then that we will be sending you an email survey later this evening that would request that you provide your ranked choices among the 3 candidates tonight. We did put a deadline of Friday, the 1st at noon, just so that we can then also put or inform the candidates and put a motion on the next city council meeting to request beginning negotiation with the recipient or the selected recipient of the council. So that is the form of how we designed tonight's presentations, and I can answer any questions of the council before we start with Gary Weber and Associates for the first selection.
Anybody on the council have any questions? Or are we just ready to see the presentations? Okay.
Alf, do you want me to just give like a high sign at the 10-minute mark? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Could be the official timer tonight.
Oh,
welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you.
Names for the record.
Start with that. I'm Carl Peterson with Gary R. Weber Associates, Managing Principal. We operate out of 402 West Liberty, Wheaton, Illinois. And with me is Lance Dorn from SB Friedman and Jason Peterson from Epstein.
Drew, may I ask you to share the presentation for the people online? Thank you.
Oh.
Bottom. Close. One more. Yep.
You think I have learned this by now?
No worries. Cool.
Right, she's. Okay, so as I said, my name is Carl Peterson. I'm managing principal of Gerard Weber Associates, and we are certainly pleased to be one of the 3 firms under consideration for this important study. I think that the study is important. It'll reveal practical solutions that will transform the South River Street corridor, pave the way for continued economic growth and vibrancy in the city of Batavia. I'll tell you a little bit about our team. On the Gary Weber side, our lead, who could not be here tonight because he's in Elk Grove Village on the community revitalization master plan up there, which is wrapping up. And so he'll be completely free for you guys in the future, should we be lucky enough to be the chosen firm. Jeff has 20 years experience on the municipal side. He's come over to our team to help grow our municipal services. And then you have Rich Olson, who's been with the firm. He's my business partner, been with the firm for over 20 years. A professional landscape architect, a physical planner, done a lot of planning and landscape architecture for private development, even here in Batavia. If you guys have heard of us before, it's probably because of private development that we've brought here over the years. And then Ellen Ramondi is on our team for environmental science purposes. Since this is a project that's near the river, there could be some environmental component. And she's a Batavia resident and has instructed us not to touch Funway when we do this job. So on the, so we brought Epstein on for transportation planning, civil engineering, consultation, and most importantly, community engagement. We really think that community engagement is important. With our past experience in Batavia, it's very active citizenry, and we think it should be that as we go through this planning process, that we're harnessing the collective wisdom of the community here. And then SB Friedman is going to be doing market economics and financial implementation. So we really put together a comprehensive team here. SB Friedman is a firm that's got an established reputation for being really the best at producing ambitious but achievable redevelopment strategies. We like them because they're rooted in reality and feasibility and have proven effective implementation strategies. We definitely don't want this to be a plan that sits on the shelf and looks nice, but can actually be implemented and get something done. So our process is really outlined. Excuse me, this is a very sensitive mouse. I guess I should be using arrows. Our process is, it's outlined in great detail in the proposal. I really feel that Jeff did a really good job of pointing out how we would go about it and what we're doing. Our overall goal is to do a comprehensive assessment, really find out what the needs are, what the goals are. There's private property involved, there's other public, there's a lot of components with this district, and we really think it's important to empower the community and lay out clear and thoughtful and implementable objectives. So again, a big part that we think is important is the community engagement. We have a series of meetings. Arrow. steering committee meetings, stakeholder interviews, public open house, and a way for people to virtually interact and give us their thoughts. So it's very robust, and again, we just think it's crucial to keep the community well-informed, to create a transparent, no surprises situation when this is all done. I think the difference between the GRWA difference really is, if you're choosing us, you're investing in, creating a vision for an improved tomorrow. Our dedication to community involvement, customized strategies, and practical solutions will really help to empower the whole community to shape its future and enabling the city to see the changes that they want to see. We really think this is a great community and feel that we can really offer a lot based on our past experiences here and in other communities. And we really do have a very solid, comprehensive team that can build a plan here that you can really work with. I'm open for questions.
Questions from anybody on the council? Anybody online? Any questions? Yes, sir.
So I see that you have the highlights of the various things that you've done before. I mean, how would you describe like some of the best accomplishments, or the ones you're most proud of? That would be maybe similar to what we're trying to do here.
I would say that the most, there's really a lot of different components to these projects that we've presented here. I think that Naperville Riverwalk plays a little bit of a play, even though Batavia really has its own heritage and history, but we're on the river, we're on the Fox, there's public park district spaces there already. I think that that experience would help shape that component of it. Our firm, our team, the in-house team, we've got Jeff Cook, who has been a village manager and community development director for his whole career. So he really understands the public side of it that you guys deal with on a daily basis. And the rest of the team really understands the private side, which is what you're trying to entice to bring in. And I really think that team and all of their combined experiences really help bring something that can be, that's not just planning, fantasy land, but a realistic approach to achieving your goals. So I don't think there's any one project that I could say, well, this is just like that. I think this is pretty unique, and it's a great opportunity.
From just initial impressions of the site area, what would you say is the area of greatest potential in this for moving forward? Like, what's the crown part of this, do you think?
Well, I don't want to assume too much. I mean, there are things that I would think would be really great. I feel like there's a gateway opportunity as you come in from the north. I think that a mixed use, I think that there should be definitely encouragement of all types of development there. It's currently industrial. We have a lot of experience with industrial builders that I think the architecture is really important there. I think it's the reshaping that area to be, I feel like there should be Batavia's always had a long history of wanting mixed use where people can live and work in kind of the same area. And I feel post-pandemic that that's even more important and that this lends itself to a very realistic approach to getting just about all those different components in there because you've got the open space, part of it's already zoned industrial. There's definitely room for, a quality multifamily development to go in there. And we've got to be respectful of the current property owners as we go about this and banding these ideas around. But I feel that going through a robust process with the community, especially since your community is so active, that there could be things that we haven't contemplated that come up here. And I'm really excited to see how it all pans out. Mark? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think kind of building on those questions, have you guys done anything? Personally, I want to see it transform from light industrial to something else. I mean, that is a gateway to the town. I've been talking about this for several years. So have you worked on anything that you've done a transformation from from one zoning to another, and has it been successful? There's one thing to have a plan, but has anybody actually moved forward with a plan that was kind of a rezoning of an area?
Yeah, so there's two projects that come to mind. The first is in Elk Grove Village. It was a large piece of land, smaller in scale than this project, but about 400 acres. And it was owned by the Bussey family, and it was a farm. Elk Grove Village, their claim to fame is we're the largest industrial park on the face of the planet or something like that. We've helped them switch to exceptional community, but that piece of property, we worked with the city through a planning process where we had mixed use ideas, we had industrial park ideas to try to market that to, it was a scenario where the ownership did not really want to sell, but the city really didn't want a cornfield in the middle of town anymore, and it ended up becoming a data center with this really really awesome landscape architect. There's like a herd of elk running through the pond. I mean, it works for the Elk Grove, and but that was one really challenging where we were coming up with different ideas to try to entice outside investment and help the Bussey family, frankly, understand the true value of their land and that type of thing. So I feel like that experience will have some very similar aspects here. And recently we've worked with the village, very similar scenario where it's village of Oak Brook. There's it's a piece of land that was owned by, well, it is owned by a land developer that hasn't been active lately, and they're hanging on to this piece. It's right in the middle of town. There's an apartment building in the middle of it, and it's surrounded by vacant land. And because of all the vacant land, the apartment building is not, it's not max capacity. It's not attractive for people to live there. And so we did a further mixed use plan, did some 3D modeling, and Oak Brook is using that to do a similar exercise. So both of those projects are smaller in scale, but similar in feel, I guess I would say. I guess the only other thing I'd like to add is that we put together a very big team. This is a very robust approach. And if the city said, hey, I really like those guys, but they're doing too much, I mean, we could adjust the scope or work with you guys on that too. So Thank you very much.
So the next presentation will be from Housing Levine, and we did ask that everybody leave the room, so that's where we may have a little bit of a delay where everybody's switching over, so I will get their presentation loaded up in the meantime here.
At least I know I have no sound for the tornado touchdown. Pictures I got.
Didn't know we needed musical transitions. But.
Butter had a friend in town here that took pictures of it.
Can I just go? Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay, well, thank you for giving us an opportunity today to present on the River Street Corridor Plan. We're really excited. I'm going to just go over a couple of quick things. I know we don't have a lot of time, 10 minutes. So I want to do real quick introductions. I really want to highlight the scope of work and what we've outlined for the project. A lot of different ways to tackle what you need to do on this corridor. So I want to go through what our approach is, maybe a couple of adjustments, or hopefully answer some questions that you may have. And then we'll go through closing. So I'm going to go pretty quick. Introductions. So for this project, House of Levine is going to prime it. We brought Meach Group on board. Michio Mirakishi, he was going to come with me today, and then the weather was something that we decided not to. So Michio used to work with House of Levine. We've worked with him for about 15, 20 years. He specializes in finance and economic development. Michio and I personally worked together for quite a long time on a lot of our projects. I would do more of the design, land use programming, and then Michio brings the numbers to it. So a really good team, love working with Michio. So I would love if we get selected for this project, I think we could really knock it out of the park. So real quick, and I know most of you, my name is Nick Davis. I'm a principal at House of Levine. House of Levine specializes in planning, design, and geospatial approaches. We're a planning firm that does planning. This is what we do. Land use scenarios, integrating the financial and fiscal side of what planning needs to do is a big part of what our firm does. When we start getting out of our area of expertise, we team with people like Michio. We work at all different scales. So we work at the comprehensive plan level, so citywide. We do downtown plans, corridor studies, sub-area studies. And then we also do a lot of zoning work, which a lot of what you want to do on this project is going to tie right into what you need to do for zoning. So the way you're going to want to implement this is through your zoning code. So there's going to be some adjustments to either the underlying district or your overlay district. So that's something that we have a lot of experience doing. We work across the country. So we're based here in the Midwest. We have offices out on the West Coast. We feel like that is an advantage when we do these types of projects. We're not just doing, what's being done in this region and bringing that expertise to the table. We know it's successful out in California and Colorado. We know what people are doing out in the Carolinas, and it just gives a different perspective on what you can do on your projects, different approaches, different ways to use TIFs or, business districts or SSAs or whatever it might be. A lot of different approaches on how different states apply those on their projects. And then innovative and fun. I hope, having worked with you on the downtown plan, you would agree we're at least innovative. I hope we were fun to work with and you enjoyed the process. A big part of what we do in that community engagement side is we want people to be excited. We want people to enjoy, the process, that type of thing. So it's an important aspect to us to engage people and keep them involved on the project. You know a lot of this, so I'm going to move through this. Corridor planning experience. We have a lot of experience doing corridor plans. We've done a lot of work here in region and throughout the country. I won't go through all of these. Our corridor planning approach is twofold. We establish the land use framework. We identify what the strategy for urban design might be, and then we implement it through zoning. So that strategy is really the approach that we bring to this project as well. I talked about Michio. He specializes in economic development. He works with municipalities on a lot of projection work. He helps establish TIF districts. He does a lot of the gap analysis work that we would pair with our projects. So that's someone that we see as an asset. So taking some of these recommendations and starting to put numbers to it so people can understand, you may want this, this is the gap you're gonna need to spend to make it work at a municipal level. All right, so scope of work, how we doing? All right, scope of work. We broke this up into 6 steps. 2 of them are optional. If we decide to fold them in, be pretty straightforward. The gap analysis would kind of tie into the step 5. But the way that we see this, at least at the baseline scope, is there's project initiation. There could be a community engagement component. We would do the corridor study vision and goals. We would establish the corridor frameworks. We would do the more detailed development and conceptual work. And then we would go into a gap analysis. So for the project initiation, this is where we would do kind of kickoff. We would do the data collection. We would meet with your department heads. We would meet with elected and appointed officials. We would do these key stakeholder interviews. I think this is going to be very important for a project like this when you're going to want to engage the property owners, the business owners, different stakeholders, residents that live around it. This is an active community, so you're going to want to make sure that people are participating and they have a voice and that they're plugged in on the project. We would do a land use and zoning analysis memorandum. So we would evaluate your underlying code, evaluate any overlays or any districts, and make sure that they're consistent with the direction the plan might want to go. So just make sure we have a good understanding of what's happening on the ground right now. We would go through a staff review. That would be sort of the beginning of an existing conditions component. So just an example, and you've seen memos like this before, I'm sure, but just getting a good understanding of what the baseline is. Here's the existing uses, understanding what the current zoning is, looking at things like transportation, urban design components, excessive curb cuts, whatever it might be, just getting everything documented so we know what we want to address in the plan. Step 2 is an optional task. So if you do have questions, I can come back to this. We can go into that in more detail. Step 3 would be the corridor study, vision, and goals. So we would prepare the vision and goals. We would do a preliminary land use and development framework, and we would work with city staff to go through any final revisions. We would have a discussion, and then we'd meet with elected officials. So I think we'd meet with this group again and just go through what some of the preliminary goals are for this project. As part of that, we would start to evaluate what are your different incentive programs that you should be using? What are some of the mechanisms to actually fund these projects, both that the city should consider, but also the property owners need to consider, and how would these all tie into the recommendations that we're going to be providing in the next step. We've often gone through, so you're breaking down your current zoning, you're evaluating the land use types. This is an example of starting to isolate what the different zones in the corridor could look like. So this is just an example in Springfield, Missouri. We start to break out typology approaches. We can identify redevelopment opportunity sites. I think that's something that you're definitely going to want to do as part of this study. And as part of those redevelopment sites, you can prepare some more detailed visualizations. So I'll show some of those in a second. As part of this, we'll move into the corridor frameworks. This is where we'll draft the corridor frameworks, which will include land use, urban design, and again, tying back some of these fiscal mechanisms. So how are we actually going to fund these improvements that we're designing? So, if this is the land use moving forward, and these are the improvements that we're recommending along the streetscape or along the roadway, what are the different approaches to actually funding these projects and making sure that they're successful? And how do you engage the property owners to make sure that they're part of the process? So again, going back to that breakdown, we would start to show this is the development enhancement approach. These are the visualizations that we want to work with the residents and the business owners. We could give brief descriptions. You can provide some examples of blocks of how this area could redevelop over time. We're intentionally keeping this general. We want to make sure that we kind of establish a vision for this area. And then later on, you could start to build these into your code to make sure that this type of development is what you see in the future. So you don't have parking in front of buildings. You might have it off to the side or in the rear. So there's a bunch of different programs. I see this corridor in chunks. It's not all one thing, right? You have some grade chains issues. You have some access issues. You have larger sites. You have tight sites. So there's a lot of different approaches that you're going to want to see. And there's going to be different uses that you're going to want to explore. So I definitely suggest breaking these down into smaller sub areas. This is just an example of then taking those typologies and starting to fit them together. So this could show you if you wanted to do, now this is a more mixed use district, not what you're really looking for on River Street, but just so you get an example of how you start to take those typologies and build out a larger development along the street. So this would tie together with your opportunity sites and make it more clear what the direction is moving forward. We can do more detailed visualizations. So in existing conditions, maybe this is what you do just to make some on-site improvements. This could be perimeter landscaping with some interior landscaping, or you could go a little bit further. And what if we were starting to do infill development? If we don't need all this this vacant parking lot space, or we have these vacant lots. So you can start to show different stages or phases of development. And I think this is a very helpful and easy tool for people to see existing versus proposed when you do these before and after graphics. The last step I'll talk about is the corridor study development completion. So we'll move into the implementation strategy. So for those that have heard me talk before, implementation is probably the most important part of planning. This is where we actually take all of those recommendations and we make them real. We give you an attainable goal. In this step is where we're going to evaluate how would you use TIF, how would you use a business district, how could you use some other incentive programs, what type of zoning do you need to think about, what are the amendments. Could be strategic amendments to your code. It could be a rewrite to a specific district. There's a lot of different approaches in actually implementing a land use plan or a framework plan. So this is that stage where we would talk about that. We would compile all of this into a complete study. We'd go through a review process. I would highly recommend doing an open house, something open forum in here, where you give residents an opportunity and business owners an opportunity to come and speak their mind. And then we would go through the public process for approval and adoption. The last step, So we would prepare the regulatory strategies framework. So this is where we're identifying all the different things that you might need to update in your code. We can even start to give you the language that you would need in your code. So that's something that we can do. We write a lot of zoning ordinances. We know how to take planning to zoning. We can do design guidelines to show what that should be, but not requiring it. So things like bulk standards, architectural style, building materials and signs, landscaping. And then the last step would be an optional task, which is that gap analysis. So if you have questions about that, I can come back. So I'm going to bounce out of this just for time.
Yeah, we're right at 10 minutes. So.
Yep. It's really interesting though. All right. So closing remarks, we definitely have the experience. Like I said, we do planning. That's what our shop specializes in. We do a lot of the visualizations. We help maybe better realize what these concepts or these recommendations are trying to accomplish. I think coupling that with the visualization and coupling that with the financial side, how are you actually going to fund these improvements is a big part of what we have experience doing. We're a creative team. We're very committed to our projects. We love doing this kind of work. We love working with this community. And implementation is how you're going to see the change that you ultimately want to see on this corridor. And so with that, I don't have any other remarks. Just thank you, and I'm thinking there's some questions.
Got any questions? Justin?
I'd actually like to hear a lot more about that gap study. It seems like it'd be a very useful tool for us to, since we're potentially making a large substantial change to our town, to have that math and be informed on if it will really, help us out.
So working with Michio, this is probably what he and I have teamed on the most over the last 7 or 8 years, is we do the visualization work, the conceptual work. This is an example of the Lincolnwood Town Center Mall up in Lincolnwood. This is a much larger scale in terms of what the redevelopment opportunities are. So we would prepare the concepts, we would give them the land use calculations, residential units, commercial counts. There's some industrial, there's flex spaces, a lot of different uses here. And he's running that through a model that we're working on with the city. And so the city helps us, how are they taxing this space? What's the revenue? We're reporting back to some of the information they get from the state. So he's starting to build out a model for them. And a good example of this is what we did in Highwood. So currently right now in Highwood, they have an opportunity to develop a site. They're very concerned about the height of the building. And this was the similar issue in Lincolnwood. People want it to be maybe 2 stories, maybe 3. And we keep telling them that you can do that, but you're going to have to pay a gap. There's going to be a differential that a developer is not going to carry. So we walk them through, you can't quite see it over here. So we walk them through this exercise of, okay, so this is option A. This is how much retail square footage you're going to get. This is option B, C. This is what happens if it's D, it might step back. E might step back. So you're seeing anywhere from 2 to 6 stories. But we show them what that gap report is going to look like. And what you're seeing is the taller the building gets, the lower the gap is going to be. It seems like logic, but when you talk about it, it's something that people need to know is how important is a 2-story versus a 4-story? Is it $5 million important? Does the city want to pay that differential? And you can do this across multiple sites just to get a better sense financially of what that impact would be. So I think it's a helpful exercise. I think it gets people thinking, as much as I want 2 stories, it's not worth $5 million or $10 million. So all of a sudden 4 stories seems more palatable. It's closer to, what's on point with what a developer is looking for, where they can pencil it out and it makes sense to them. And then the gap just is a helpful tool. Yeah, it's a thing that we've done quite a bit recently with the visualizations, just to give them a little bit more than just a pretty picture. It's a helpful assessment about what you could actually do and how it's going to be financed.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
They went with 5, which was good.
But like you said, the gap analysis and the community engagement are optional. They're not included in your baseline budget. Is that correct?
So as it's scoped now, yes. I think there's parts of the gap analysis that's definitely a standalone component. There's different levels. What we did in Highwood is very different than what we did in Lincolnwood. So it would just depend. If you want to identify a couple of sites, I think that makes it more realistic to come in at a price point that you're probably looking for. The outreach, I was just talking about this with our team. There's parts of that outreach that we already have the infrastructure built up for the downtown plan. So I think transferring some of that information is pretty straightforward. There's just a couple of additional things that we were trying to get to a certain number, but we can always fold those back in. And then there's other parts of the scope too. And I always say this, this is our attempt to address what's in your RFP. But if given the opportunity, we could certainly work with you on the budget, on the scope, and get it closer to what you're looking for.
Mark?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of things that resonated with my idea, which is kind of rezoning that whole area. Do you have examples of places that you've put together a plan on rezoning an area and then them actually implementing it? Because I imagine the biggest challenge is all those landowners are going to be like, I don't want to move, or business owners that don't want to move to other places because we eventually, in a decade or two, they move out.
Yeah. Yes. So this project in Springfield, and we've done this for quite a few projects. I think we're in a unique position. We do a lot of planning, but we do zoning too. And not a lot of firms are able or do both. And so because of that, when we write these plans, we're thinking about how would you actually codify this? And so this project specifically was done it was a very quick project. It was about 6 months. And we did the corridor framework first, with what you're looking at here. And then we wrote the language that followed it up as a district. So this whole district got turned into an overlay. So it was a specific corridor and it's kind of interesting because it's coming right into their downtown. We were doing in the downtown plan at the same time, and they really wanted to zero in on this corridor because it is one of the key gateways, and they were very frustrated about what was happening in some of the development proposals that were coming in. So I think this is a great example. It was also tied to an improvement along the road that was happening. So a lot is already starting to come to the table. They had some proposals that were very inconsistent with the plan, and they used this plan and they used the code to shoot them down, which to me is great because they said you're not consistent with the vision for this corridor. It wasn't popular at the time. Since then, I always think this is really interesting. I guess Brad Pitt is really into investment. So his brother is friend or brother is investing in a bunch of these different corridors in the area, or a bunch of the different blocks in the area. So it's really shown where you got to just kind of wait it out. Establish the planning policy, put the zoning in place, work with those property owners, and over time, the investment in that property is going to be why people will leave, because they're going to get their return on that property. So we also didn't want to kick people out. So we were trying to build a time frame into this. So if people wanted to stay and they want to make the improvements on site, great. If they don't and they sell the property, it can be more consistent with what you want to see in the future. So yeah, definitely land use first, then zoning. And then how do you incentivize those improvements over time? It's a good approach.
How much homework did you do?
I'm sorry?
How much homework did you do? Because you hit the nail on the head on every possible constituent issue that we have. The gap issue should not be optional. It is the reason why our North River project failed.
Sure.
Is that there were 2 very different philosophies. Do you go big and get the public parking deck, or do you go smaller and have it fit in more with the community? And it was 2 very different philosophies. And we couldn't find a way to get them to match exactly. The mayor was breaking ties for us at the end. It limped across the line, and then the thing didn't happen.
Yeah.
In this project here, it's many fewer landowners, many fewer, and will probably take 30 years to build. How do we implement a 30-year plan like that when sometimes people can't even see 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, the reality is this isn't a unique issue to a lot of communities, and especially with these types of corridors, those that are like going into it downtown, or maybe corridors that were very industrial and almost we call them like the junk drawers, right? They were great uses. They didn't really have a good place for them, and this is where they all sort of started to stack up. It was a good tax base for a long time, but now with all these different improvements that are happening in and around it, it's an opportunity to kind of reimagine this. I do think it's a slower game than sometimes people want it to be, and you have to acknowledge that. The goal here isn't to push all these businesses out. You have businesses here who've probably been here for a long time. You want to work with that community first. You want to, and this is where I think and I say this, but when I say this, what I mean is there's superficial improvements you could make on site to have a lot of these buildings fit in with the context of what you're looking for. So that's one of the first things you want to do in that land use and that urban design framework are, how do we take the properties that we think have a place here, which could be quite a few of them, and just make them more attractive, more aesthetically pleasing, serving that gateway into the downtown. And then these other opportunities that are around it will be the catalyst sites. You see improvements on one or two of these specific redevelopment opportunities, and it's going to serve as a catalyst for change over time. That's the game you have to play if you want to go the land use and zoning route. The other way to do it is the city starts buying up a lot of property. That's very challenging to do, and it's not always the most successful approach. I think that's one of the things that we would evaluate when we go through the incentives portion of this, or the funding portion of this, is how much does the city want to put into investing. I would say land use and zoning is your best tool, and some of these TIF is probably one of your best mechanisms to seeing these improvements happen. It's not fast, but it will happen over time.
The problem with that is if we pull the trigger too soon, we're going to have to re-TIF again, and then it becomes politically not feasible anyways.
Sure. The first thing I would do is establish the community's vision for this corridor, get the land use outlined, update your zoning code, then you start exploring these avenues with TIF or whatever the other. That's not the only one. It's in Illinois, it's probably one of the most effective. Love or hate it. It's a very successful tool in implementing what a land use plan and a zoning code is trying to do. So I wouldn't discount that one at all, but it's not the only one either. And I cannot stress enough, working with the property owners and working with the businesses that are there is one of the best entry points into successfully implementing this project. So you got to start there. Those would be some of those key stakeholder discussions. Want them to participate the entire way. Everybody in Batavia is going to have strong opinions about what should happen there, but there's businesses who've been there that need to be part of this process. So that's definitely our approach.
And we are at 20 minutes now.
Okay. Could we do one more?
Mayor, you get one question.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment to make. That area down there, basically from Laurel Street South to the city limits down, is all stone quarries. The whole thing was 10 different stone quarries from Laurel Street all the way down to where the railroad track crosses 25 down there. And so when Chicago burned down in 1871, there was a huge demand for that stone, and it was very easy to get because the railroad track had already been put in, and they could mine it right next to the railroad track, bring it up and put it on the railroad cars and haul it away. That's why all the buildings down there, none of them really have a basement. If they have any kind of lower level, it's a walkout at the back, including the VFW and everybody else. And nobody's ever been able to really go down there and dig anymore because it's all rock. And where the Little League Park is, that was in the river for a while. And then William Clark came along, and he had one of the big stone quarries, and he started mining it. And so he got the island, which we now have as a kind of an area for people to cross the river down there. He made that out, and that's got limestone underneath that. And the east bank of the river at that location was all stone quarry till he mined it out so he could get a little river flow through there and make it into more of a park setting. So anybody that goes down there is going to have to deal with that limestone situation, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it certainly will hold the building up, but it won't give you much opportunity to dig very deep for a basement or anything else because it's solid rock down there.
Yeah, and I don't think the vision of this plan, I don't know yet, but as you work through this, I don't think the vision of this plan is to build this big, mixed-use district or commercial district, not something that would directly compete with your downtown. But there's definitely a way for it to better tie into what you're about to enter in downtown Batavia. So I think you answered the Clark Island question that I had last week, that it came from the quarry. So that's good. We couldn't figure out why it was called that. Yeah, I
Right
mean,
after
there's,
the guy that owned the quarry.
yeah, that makes
And
sense.
he's the guy that opened up the idea that we would have an island there, and you would have this little bridge that he made out of limestone and everything else.
I get to name
So
it.
it all comes together, but that's a very, kind of almost a historic area there with the story that goes with all the rebuilding of Chicago. That and our swimming pool on the west side of town, which was, again, used for rebuilding Chicago. That was its heyday when all that happened, so.
All right, I know we're out of time, but.
May I ask
One more,
quick
I just
question?
got one question.
Sorry.
With the proximity to the river, as the mayor was talking about, do you have experts on your team that are well-versed in kind of natural resources management and making sure that all of our codes and standards are also being sensitive to what's being built there and how it affects the river?
Yes, so my background is in landscape architecture. We have 2 people on our staff that have expertise. Actually, John Housel went to school for ecology. So that's something that when we do zoning, that's actually my point of entry into zoning was stormwater management. So just understanding the impacts that impervious surfaces can have on the stormwater management, the recharge areas, all of those different components. And you got a lot of wildlife, vegetation, those types of considerations. So yeah, very much that's something that our team takes into consideration, has the knowledge for. Any other questions? Am I breaking the rules?
Good, when we're asking questions, we make the rules.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, when the mayor raises his hand, I mean, you gotta answer the question. All right. Well, I mean, with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to present. Tricia was going to be here today. She had to cover another meeting for me, so I appreciate her doing that. There's a couple people on our team that you've met before. That's who would work on this project. We have some zoning experts, and then Michio who would join us. So would love the opportunity to continue working with the city. We love this community. I drive that corridor so many times, so I know it very, very well. Would love to be a part of helping you make it what I think everybody, would like to see it be in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Right at 20, Drew.
Right, the last presentation will be by the Lakota group, and I will load that up now. Oh, yeah. Okay, so just want to make sure. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's perfect. Good to go. Good to start. Thanks for having us tonight. Bringing up the tail end here, but you guys seem pretty awake, so that's great. My name's Kevin Clark. I'm with the Lakota Group. I'm joined by Hannah Bader. We are excited to talk to you about this and get into some questions. So we have a brief presentation, 10 minutes, and then we'll answer any questions you guys have. A little bit about our team tonight. Talk about our approach, how we would approach this project. Obviously, there's flexibility in that, but we kind of thought about how that would play out. We want to talk a lot about community engagement. We think that's super important. That's a big hallmark of what we do. And then we'll show you a few examples and then talk about end goals and where we think this is headed. And of course, I'm sure you guys are going to give us your thoughts on that. But first, about our team, the Lakota Group. We have been around for 31 years. We're a Chicago-based landscape architecture, urban planning, community engagement, historic preservation firm. I'm Kevin Clark. I've been there for 20 years. I'm a planner and landscape architect. So I kind of wear both hats depending on the project. In a project like this, I feel like you need all of those hats. And that's why we have the folks that you see on the screen. Siraj is a vice president. He would be involved in this. Josh is our economic development guy, answering those market questions to help us figure out what's feasible. Being realistic is important. Hannah would be the project manager on the project. I don't know if you want to say anything about your background.
Sure. So I'm a urban planner, but I also have a background in landscape architecture. So I studied and practiced in environmental design for a couple of years before going back to school. So I have a great interest in how those two work together and how you can make change through design and planning. And also community engagement is kind of what led me to urban planning. So I'll be talking later about our approach, but love engaging the community and having them be a part of the process. So thank you.
And then you see Alexis and Carlos, planners. Carlos has an architecture background. So we kind of have all of those things in-house. And then we bring in other consultants that we work with. Jake Seed, he's with Sightline. He's a zoning guru to start to talk about those types of things. And then Sam Schwartz, they're a nationally renowned transportation planning firm. Been working with Stacy and her team for years on a number of projects. Just want to talk a little bit about our approach. The way we break this down is in 3 phases. That first phase we say is engage and discover, and that's us getting out in the field. That's us talking to people. We're reviewing physical conditions and seeing things with our own eyes, but we're also having conversations. I love coffee, so one of the first things we do is have focus groups, find the coffee shop in downtown. Let's have some conversations. We want to engage people and understand what this is about. So we'll do that for a few days, but then we'll have workshops or other events which we'll talk about. The second phase is about where we want to go. We hear what people want. What are people's visions? So we envision that. We draw up concepts or ideas and a range of things to get on the wall at a workshop or other event to get response. And that's how we start to hone in on what the plan is and what the overall comprehensive vision can be. And then that third phase is how do we get there? So we start to talk about implementation. We're thinking about it the whole time, but how are we funding different projects? Out of this could be a number of projects, public, private. So there could be a lot of different initiatives. It could be small, short-term to long-term, right? So thinking about how we get there and having a real good, strong roadmap for achieving that vision over time. So that first phase, when we analyze, we're looking at the streetscape, the public realm, we're looking at the existing conditions of buildings, and the analysis of what's happening with land use and zoning and the different mix of land uses that are occurring. And then we're also looking at the transportation conditions. You guys have bike paths and parks and all of these great things adjacent to this corridor. So how are we going to ultimately tie into that? How can we use it as a benefit, as an asset to build from? So we look at all of those things together, and also the market. What's financially feasible? If we're thinking about different land uses than what exists today, we want to understand that. And that's where Josh's role on our team really plays an important part, so that when we develop maybe scenarios of new buildings or adaptively reusing buildings, we feel confident that that can happen. And we're drawing ideas from that. So that's a big part of that first phase, doing our research and understanding it. And then once we have that, and we just show examples here, how do we communicate that to people? How do we bring stuff back to the community, to people that we've talked to, that lets them know that we heard them in different ways? So whether it's showing a new mixed-use building, showing residential, or adaptively reusing a building for a better use, thinking about urban design and placemaking, making better places. To me, this project is about making a better place, a gateway corridor into your downtown, which already has all this great stuff happening. So to me, this is an opportunity to improve the physical environment and really create a district. And there's a lot that goes into that. And so it's not just about new buildings. It's not just about, hey, we're going to put one bike path here. It's kind of thinking about all of those things together. And then ultimately creating a framework where we can specifically point to projects and things that we want to, that will make this vision come to fruition. So we just, again, showing an example of where we lay that out in a plan graphically, so somebody can simply look at it and say, hey, we understand where this is headed. We understand what the recommendations are. They're pointing to it on a map, and then there's a narrative that goes with it, and there's a chart at the end that shows how we're getting there. I'm going to let Hannah talk about engagement, and then I'll dive back in.
All right, thank you for having us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the engagement approach, kind of what we do in our engagement and why it's so important to us. At Lakota, as Kevin kind of mentioned, we really pride ourselves on our engagement approach. It's something that all of us in our office are passionate about and like to be a part of with any of our projects. And we really work with you guys to create a robust engagement plan that's really about building relationships, whether that's with the residents, whether that's with local developers and the businesses that already exist. It's all about building relationships and trying to find out what the needs and the values of a community are. So when we start our engagement process, we always begin with informing and listening. The way we start our inform part of the process is really through creating a strong project brand. So this is something that speaks to the vision and the end result for this process. It also kind of creates excitement around this initiative, and then is kind of works as something that separates any other city happenings from this process so that people understand what we're actually studying. And this brand ends up living on throughout the document. We like to include it through all of the graphics we make for the marketing. We push this into a project website where we're updating that regularly with plan documents, engagement opportunities, and places where people can share their thoughts and ideas. So this project brand kind of lives on and kind of grows throughout the plan. And then, as Kevin also mentioned, we start to listen. So that starts with our stakeholder interviews, where we're meeting with key stakeholders in the community, from businesses to developers to local organizations, students, everyone who's going to be a part of the process and who's going to be impacted by the end result. And this is really a chance for us to create kind of a hub of information for the process. It identifies key themes on what makes this community unique and what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing in the corridor. We at Lakota, we like to get very creative and flexible with our approach that we take to engagement. We found that not one size fits all for everyone, and it's really important to work with your staff to figure out the best strategies and also partners who can help us reach a wide audience. We have a lot of experience with engagement from more traditional approaches like open houses and workshops, where we're showing up in a community space such as City Hall, and we have exhibits that give more information and allow the community to share their thoughts. But the thing we love doing most is, you guys have a strong community here. You have events that are happening. And we find that showing up at those events really allows us to kind of get an understanding of the community and what makes you special just from viewing, but also talking with people who might not know about the process. And some of those things we've done for that are more interactive and incentivized, where we bring in local artists, local musicians to kind of tailor these events around some kind of creative element that can live out on through the process. In this lower one, you'll see we did host an event where we created like a small mural that lived on in City Hall, just a different way to engage with people and the youth. So those are always fun for us to do. And another important piece to a comprehensive engagement approach is really not so much worrying about the people who are going to longtime residents, really active in the community, because we know they'll show up at the meetings, they'll make sure their voices are heard. But we understand that Batavia is a large community. There are a lot of different groups, different age groups, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and it's important that we work with you guys to kind of understand the barriers that exist for those people maybe being involved in the process, and finding unique ways that we can reach them through partnerships, as well as different opportunities, whether that be online platforms or showing up at different venues where they might be. So that is our engagement. I'll let Kevin jump into projects.
We just show examples of things that we've done because they help people visualize what you're going to see in a plan and what you'll see along the way. And we show the idea of how maybe in the Clark Street project, we created a brand that ultimately became a brand for the corridor, and they used in banners and they used on murals, which I'll show you later. And then the idea of reusing buildings for better purposes, creating a parklet, which they did. So these visions ultimately becoming part of the character of the community in this neighborhood that we worked in. And then that brand being extended into the physical space of the neighborhood, into the streetscape. The idea that we can think creatively about, hey, if we can't have bricks and mortar place, or we can provide maybe a pop-up shop where people can come in and sell their wares, somebody that can't afford to pay rent yet, let's get them up and running, put them next to a new green space that can be, populated through some railroad ties and some cool art. The idea that we can better use parking lots for outdoor dining when you have by bringing a food truck there in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, and then the murals that were created from the plan that we developed, and then ultimately we create the idea that we can create something cohesive by the branding and then extending that into signage that ultimately was built. And to me, part of this is you need to create something cohesive, something that creates that district, and that is through branding, that's through streetscape and physical improvements. In Indianapolis, we worked on the cultural trail. We just showed this example of how we engage folks there. You have all these people riding by on a bike path or walking. We realized if COVID taught us something, it was that QR codes actually have value, and everybody has a phone, of course. So how do we get those people that can't come to a meeting, that have the soccer games, and they don't want to come to City Hall at 7 o'clock, right? We can get them on a phone, and they can scan a QR code, and they can take a 10 to 15-minute survey. They can see everything that we had hosted at the workshop virtually, and they can do it that way. So just by putting these little flyers around with the QR code, we were able to get a lot more engagement and a lot more feedback on the elements of the plan. And we just show how that ultimately is visualized and the kind of things that we will show as we get into this. And as we think about the corridor here, and I already kind of mentioned like how important it is as a route into downtown, as that gateway, and thinking about shifting, maybe providing a range of land uses. Are we talking about mixed use? Are we exploring housing? Are we, we could show all of those things, right? And that's it's part of the process of going through a corridor plan. To me, you've got the beautiful setting, you're right there. So there's so much to build from, which is exciting, and it's right there, but we kind of need to flip what's happening in order to make it what you want it to be. It's auto-oriented now, so thinking about, how do we make it more multimodal? How do we invite pedestrians? Or can we get some sidewalks and some lighting and some benches and all of those things to go along with other future private investment? And we've done streetscape projects in other places that have really turned, as I was working on Lockport Street in Plainfield, I watched people, when we did this project, we did a little road diet project with streetscape, made it beautiful. There was a public investment there. I watched people start fixing their buildings up and getting the permits out for outdoor dining. So there is a symbiotic relationship between those things. When people see that you're going to make an investment, then the other investment follows. So those are the kind of things that, I think we want to be able to show and as part of this process, right? Defining success, ultimately through the process, you find out, what your stakeholders want, what they need. You create a framework for the next 10 years, maybe longer, but at least you're setting a roadmap for like, hey, here's some short-term to long-term projects that we want to occur out of this. And you have a plan and a budget strategy for it to occur. Planners love to have that, right? They love to have that roadmap of what can happen and how much are we supposed to spend on this. You have compelling imagery and ideas. That's a big part of it. Part of this is reality. There's got to be a little visionary, right? You got to provide a little vision to go with that. And then you have a vision goals and strategies that come out of it. And those you can define like your success along the way. And ultimately, it's only as good as if your plans come to life, if you can create that vision that ultimately can be built, even if it's small stuff, even if it's the art project, we show the idea of that parklet that was built, all the way through large development plans, which we work for developers, we work for public, so we kind of get all of those things. So ultimately, we want to create a corridor plan that you guys can bring to life over time. And with that, I'll stop talking and answer your questions. And I, again, appreciate the time and staying late after that tornado scare.
You have any questions, Mark?
Yeah, what I envision, I've been talking about this for a while, is that it needs to be rezoned, in my opinion. It's too important of an entry into the city. Have you worked on rezoning entire areas like that? And one is having a plan, but two is having it actually come to fruition. Do you have examples of where that's happened?
Yeah, I'd say, well, absolutely. And I think, to me, vision comes first. Zoning's a tool, right? Like you want to know, what are you rezoning to? And what's the best zoning tool to get there? To me, I was thinking about this because I knew somebody was going to ask, well, what project? And we've worked in so many different contexts over time. And I hesitate to say that the city of Rockford, because there's a perception, right? But they have a gateway corridor there that we worked on. We did a corridor plan, Illinois Route 2, and there's every land use along there, but it's along the river, right? And so part of our plan was, okay, let's connect to the river better, bike path, pedestrian. Let's do a streetscape project to slow down cars because people are speeding through this neighborhood. And then let's find the assets and build from it. They had this huge site, Barbara Coleman site, big industrial site, had been vacant. They had been remediating it for years. And it's taken so long. But right now, there's a developer redeveloping the Barbara Coleman site. It's right, I mean, it's millions of square feet. It's huge. And it's smack dab in this neighborhood. They did the bike path. They did the streetscape project. They did the beautification part, the placemaking, and the art. There's a new bridge. Now they're doing hey, here's the new development. Here's the injection. And part of that was we have to figure out how to rezone this around this area so that we can allow the types of uses to go in here. And there's like a mixed use environment from this old industrial zoning.
I'm still not going to ask this question because I would say of the projects I'm familiar that you've done, they're so visionary. It is the only thing I remember about that town. You guys do really great work. How do you make sure that your project fits in with the character of the community and make sure that it's not too visionary? Because some of the coffee conversations you're going to have with people, you might be disappointed to hear that they're not interested for 30 more years. They're not ready for these things, and trends and things are going to change over time. We have to be patient with this particular project. So how do you bring this enthusiasm and this track record of good, cool stuff? You're the only cool thing about Indianapolis as far as I'm concerned. Honestly, I will drive anywhere to see a stand-up comedy show. How do you pair that? Because we need to be patient if we're picking you.
Yeah, I'll start. You can jump in if you want, Hannah. To me, it's every place is different. I want to build from your assets and what you have here. It's culturally, it's super interesting to me. As a planner, as a landscape architect, you go to these places and you're building from that. So we're starting from there. And it's not always about like, hey, the final thing. It's not always about the final picture, right? It's what can we do? Sometimes it's just like the small wins, frankly. Like I've been a part of really small projects. We did this project in my neighborhood where we did these little people space designs, and they were just little opportunities for people to gather. We did these designs. They happen. It was awesome to watch people drinking coffee there, like when you walk by. So sometimes it's the small wins that just get it going and show momentum and get people excited that things can actually happen. And reminding people there is a larger vision out there. And that's why we have the website, and that's why we communicate, and that's why we get out there so that people understand that there's more to it, and we want to keep that going over time. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does. In fact, to your point, if Rockford is in a death spiral right now and you did anything to help change any of that direction, do not be ashamed to talk about it. That's good. It's good work.
I'm super proud of that. I mean, actually, if you go, there's a lot of good stuff happening, and they've had some decent leadership there to make that happen. And that's totally off to the side, but yeah.
I have two things. One, I do like your approach to community engagement, especially unique ways of getting people out there who might not otherwise think to be interested in this sort of stuff, which is something we've discussed before. in the packet you submitted, one of the options was a barbecue. We're getting that, right?
Yes, Siraj will be cooking it for you.
Yeah.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
More seriously, looking at the examples you gave, most of those were areas that had already developed and maybe just needed refurbishment, and upgrades to that area.
Sure.
This is, I would argue, more of a blank slate sort of situation. I mean, we have some stuff there, but a lot of it is still very much infill green space development, greenfield development. Do you foresee any challenges? Do you have any expertise in more of a starting from the grass sort of situations like this?
Absolutely. I mean, we work with developers where we're literally they're doing projects and we're helping them do land planning, the site planning. So it's almost like it is like a blank slate in those scenarios. So from a land planning and site planning standpoint, for sure, I think, challenges are always property ownership. Are there, we got to remediate this site, or this isn't, so to what level and what is the land use? So those are challenges for sure. But we could show, that's why we have the market piece of it. So we're showing a range of things that people could say, yes, that's possible. Yes, that fits within the character that I see happening here. And we're a flexible group. I mean, I pride myself on like showing a lot of different ideas until we get to the right thing. It's a process. It's not like, hey, we're coming out with the answer. I'm not going to unroll. I don't have, our old school architect that just puts it on paper and says, make it happen. That's not the way it works, right? So there's conversations and there's iterative process to get to that final vision.
Yeah, and I'll echo that in saying that it also does tie back to the engagement piece of this. I know a lot of times we'll come into community with a couple of ideas in our head, and when we start these conversations, we learn so many different things that we wouldn't have known about the place, and that are unique and wonderful ideas that actually come to fruition because they're based and grounded on the people who are here. So we love to test ideas, but we also love to test the ideas that are given to us by the community. So.
Yeah, and if I can give you an example of, we did a project in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and they had an explosion that occurred on the edge of their downtown.
Oh, wow.
Like 2 blocks, like a gas explosion, blew up all the buildings. And so we came in and we did the whole planning process, and it was almost like therapy in a way, like people were talking about this and in a way that it was pretty moving. But they wanted to redevelop, and what was the right answer? And so ultimately it was a blank slate. They had context, and there's always context you don't ignore. That's the starting point. But it was a blank slate. And ultimately we did a plan, we did the engagement where we got 1,800 people. They had a Hmong community. We had to have translation. They had Spanish. There was all kinds of stuff happening there engagement wise. We did a plan and a vision. And then they got the developers. We acted as a development advisor for the city. It's under construction now. 2 different sites. There's a hotel going in and a mixed-use building going in. The principles that we outlined in the plan are being upheld by the city council there because they're saying, no, this is the plan. There are principles tied to this. You have to have open space here. We want a plaza at the corner. There should be a place for a memorial. So that's how I see something like this playing out. It's like we can develop those principles because it's never going to be exact, right? It's not final architecture, but it's a plan and a vision that you can show people how to get there.
I'll just say we're past the 20-minute mark.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we have anybody online with a question, and I think we are done here. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around.
Being here.
So just as I said at the beginning, the presentations tonight, we will be sending an email. I believe it'll be coming from Max directly. So if you look for that, otherwise it might be by Qualtrics. I'm not sure exactly which way the email is coming, but look for that tonight or tomorrow morning. So thanks.
We have through the weekend.
No, Friday.
Yeah, I should say Friday at noon.
Friday at noon.
Just so that we can try and get this on the council agenda with a direction.
And remember, any questions go through Max singly, don't reply all on it, so we're not having a meeting outside of the meeting.
So yeah, just in terms of the form of it'll ask your preferred candidate. It'll then ask you to do rank 1, 2, and 3 of the 3 candidates. And then I believe there's a comment field at the end if you want to provide any comments.
So it's not that hard.
It should be pretty straightforward.
I was thinking I had
It's a
to
simple
this
test.
big.
It's not like the sexual harassment one that takes 60 minutes. Okay?
That's hard.
But still do it in 30.
Otherwise, if there's not anything else, we appreciate your questions and everything tonight and listening to the presentations.
Narrow it down to 3. Okay. All right, we'll skip item 11 and we'll move to item 12. Resolution 2024-031R, authorizing sale of municipally owned real estate west of 841 Morton Street. Another railroad strip property to get rid of.
Yes, this is another parcel of land that is an adjacent owner that was interested. They actually have some encroachments on our land. And the easiest thing here was to sell the piece to them that is not necessarily used for any municipal purposes other than utilities. So this would be the first step in the process to sell the land to them. We would be asking for $2,250 for this 15-foot wide strip of land. And we have to go through the process of advertising it and making it available for the general public to purchase it. But considering the limited utility of it, plus the fact that we would retain a utility and drainage easement over it, it would have limited desirability to anybody to purchase it. So we're recommending approval of the resolution to proceed with the sale.
Do you have any questions? Literally, it's probably at a 45-degree angle alongside the path between their house and the path. One of my favorite things that I got pushed through was the
What's the encroachment?
Sidewalk path. What?
What's the encroachment?
Probably storage of either a boat or a car or.
There's a driveway actually that they built on it also.
I think it's a good thing we get rid of the piece, and just be done with that. Questions? I will make the motion that we recommend to council resolution 2024-31R, authorizing sale of municipally owned real estate west of 841 Morton Street. Second. Motion by Wolf, second by Solfa. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Okay, then we move on to item 13, which is resolution 2024-034R, authorizing execution of contract with Brandt Excavating for preliminary water main work associated with the Prairie and Wilson intersection improvements.
Jeremy did prepare a memo. Thank you. This project was budgeted as part of the Prairie and Wilson project, but it is a separate project. It's not part of the larger project. We did it on purpose due to a number of different issues that we ran into that would have caused delays to the larger project. So we chose to separate this one out on its own. Jeremy has gone out and requested quotes from contractors. And as he explains in here, sometimes working in the historic areas, contractors aren't willing to just give you a fixed price. So they are willing to do it on a time and materials basis. And only one contractor, Brandt, was willing to actually then add a not to exceed price on top of that. So that even though it's being done under T&M, we do have a ceiling that it won't exceed the cost. So really this is just cleaning up a lot of old water mains in the area of well number 4, which is the well on Wilson Street, which has been abandoned now 4 years maybe. I can't remember when it was abandoned, but it's been about that long. And that well just sits out there now, just abandoned in place. So we are recommending to move forward with Brandt. Tonight, if you approve this, it'll then go onto the council agenda. There'll be 2 line items. It'll be a first line item to waive formal bidding and then a second line item to approve the resolution. So.
I have one. Are we planning at any point to decide to abandon that site and level it? I don't know if it's big enough to put a house on. I don't know the exact dimensions of that property over there, but that's something that I know has kind of been out there for.
It has been, and it's one of those long-term things that, just like you guys were just talking about, corridor planning and corridor enhancements. Jeremy has some old historic photos of the tank when the tank was first built, and it is just a combination of rebar. When that building comes down one day, it's going to be really difficult to take down. So that's why we've kind of just left it there for now. We don't need to incur the cost, especially right now. The water utility is doing several big capital projects. Aesthetically, it still looks just fine. We're keeping it maintained, making sure that everything is in good condition out there. It's just sitting out there for now.
I was just curious as if we get to a point where we're going to replace main section over there or something that would require us to get even close to that building, then maybe try to start planning that to abandon it, however you want to describe it. But you're right, I'm sure that will not be simple.
Yeah, there was talk even just a couple of years ago about murals, putting a mural on that tank. There had been talks over the years about different again entry features into the downtown. But yeah, getting rid of the tank itself is going to be an expensive proposition, knowing how it was built.
We did have some discussions about that parcel with, potential reuse if we can sell it for a very small commercial use. We have some issues with the railroad and some question about who owns what out there. So that's something we're still working with the railroad on, to be honest.
Look at Scooter's coffee site.
Yes.
Exactly. Right.
Look
There you
at
go.
Anthony there to economic development right there.
This is just a historical question. Why was the pump put into disuse?
Why was what?
Why was it put into disuse?
Oh, so we had two backup wells, and pump number 4, well number 4 was determined to be in very poor condition. So the city council made a decision almost when I first started here that when that well finally died, we weren't going to invest the nearly 7 figures to go back into it just for a backup well. So we used it another 5, 6, 7 years after that until it finally died, and then that was it. Then we filed for abandonment.
Thank you.
Part of the excavation is done for the Volk Memorial Tunnel.
Yes.
Across town. We always talked about putting a tunnel from east to west, so half of it,
You still remember that?
That was right about the time that you got hit. I remember that discussion.
His solution to traffic was, why don't we just build another road underneath Wilson?
I vote for another Mocha coffee shop.
Yeah, I'd go for a coffee shop over a tunnel.
Mocha.
There's way too much
a little
limestone to deal with. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I'll make the motion that we recommend City Council Resolution 2024-34R, authorizing execution of contract with Brandt Excavating for preliminary water main work associated with Prairie and Wilson Street intersection improvements. Motion by Wolf, second by Solfa. And then realize that this will be on the regular agenda because it will have to have the waive of formal bidding and then approval on it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Move right on to project status.
Well, probably the most impactful information that we received last week was the governor's proposal to eliminate the grocery tax, the 1% tax. And while during his speech, it received, a standing ovation from both sides of the aisle, one thing that I don't think was considered was the impact to municipal budgets, because that 1% tax is passed through to municipalities with just a little bit of administrative expense being taken off of that. And with the number of grocery stores that the city of Batavia has, that actually represents $1.1 million in our budget. And so while there are things that we can do to mitigate the impact of that, should it be implemented as of July 1st of this year, it represents a permanent $1 million hole in our budget that we will have to account for from now on in all of our future budgets. So we need to have conversations about what we will do to replace that revenue going forward. And so we'll put that on a future call. Alderman Lancy, did you have a comment?
So he's going to repeal the only tax they were giving back to us?
And
Great.
I had a discussion with a political candidate who happens to be in Congress down there right now, and he said that's probably the one thing that's probably going to go through.
Yeah.
They feel like the talk is on the floor that that's the one thing that they're going to allow to happen. He intimated that there might be some give back of LGDF to try to offset some of that, but that has been out there every year and it never passes.
And I'm pretty sure it will not result in Batavia getting $1 million.
No, it would not. It would not replace what we would lose.
No.
And I don't know. That's a big frustration to me to hear that from somebody that's down there and really feels like that's the way they're going to go, because most everybody has. That makes everybody feel good. Other than the municipalities that are going to lose the money from it, you know, for a political reason, it's a good thing.
Be impacted probably.
Right.
Across
Yeah,
the
it
state.
makes it look like the state is actually doing something.
Exactly,
to
and they're not.
reduce state,
They're doing something bad.
revenue or something
Right.
like that.
Because that revenue will have to come from someplace.
Somewhere.
It represents services to our community, and unless we are saying, well, okay, we understand state, we'll cut back on our services to residents by $1 million next year. It's impossible. So we'll have more conversations as staff tries to come up with some potential solutions to the issue. And also, we need to talk to our legislators and let them know how impactful this is to us. And I understand that, you know, the point that it is a regressive tax, but to have it be implemented immediately with a budget without any notice or opportunity to plan for the reduction in that revenue, that's what makes this so significant.
Hey, Laura. I did speak to Representative Hirschauer on Saturday, and she is very much aware, especially for the communities that she represents, and understands that there is a little bit of work that needs to be done for that and the impact on the community.
Right.
So she is very much aware of that. It'll be interesting to see what kind of negotiations can go on before the budget is actually passed.
I sat in on a Zoom meeting this afternoon for 2 hours with 15 mayors from throughout the region. And I've never heard, I've been here a long time, as you all know, I've never heard so much dismissal and disdain for anything as I heard this afternoon from that. And city after city, and I'm not going to name them, but they were naming all the stuff they're going to have to cut. And they were talking about, we're going to hang this around the governor's neck when we have to reduce the size of the police department or shut down part of the fire department or whatever we're having to do. So I think this is going to be a real messy thing here in the next few weeks, because there's a lot of people very, very upset about it.
We need to make sure that we voice our concerns with this.
I would encourage us to make noise about it.
Right, and I think it needs to be all of us, and we need to figure out the best ways to do that, however each one of us wants to, but I think we all need to make sure that we contact as many, you know, reps that we have and, you know, try to build off whatever relationship we have with them to tell them that if they're gonna do this, it can't be just drop dead in the middle of the year on it. If they would stage it out, cities could plan for it and figure out how to do it. I don't know if that's a year or 2 years or whatever, but to just immediately cut that off to me is ridiculous.
Suggestion at the meeting I was at is that each city ought to make up its own resolution and then have all the aldermen or trustees vote on it, pass it, and then send this along to your individual trustees or state representatives and senators.
And then another one to the governor.
It speaks to a larger issue in the country. There's a pendulum effect going on. They're in a purple state or a blue state afraid of their own Democrats, losing them to the presidential election. That speaks more to a national story that's going on, that he would have to throw us red meat to the residents, knowing that we're the ones that actually have to do the work.
I think it has to be based in reality that although that money will help people because you won't have to pay that tax.
Sure.
That money's going to have to come from somewhere, and all the municipalities are going to have to figure ways to do that. It's either cut services or raise taxes.
Or implement their own grocery tax as well. So I will continue to follow this issue and bring you additional information. These are times when our relationship and membership in organizations like Metro West and IML are so valuable because they give us a larger voice in Springfield than we would have merely on our own.
Metro West is not communicated their opinion.
Going to.
They're working on it, yeah. Second is bringing back the single-use bag revenue, the single-use bag fee revenue discussion. There are a lot of business items planned for the March 12th Committee of the Whole meeting, and I wanted to know if last time when we had the single-issue special cow discussion after a city council meeting, I think that kind of worked pretty well instead of having to have a special cow on a separate day. So with your permission, I'd like to bring that to right after Monday's meeting.
Coming Monday.
Yep, this coming Monday, March 4th.
I don't think there's anything long or controversial to deal with on Monday night's meeting, so I think we could do that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then one of the items on March 12th is going to be the changes, the potential changes to the video gaming city code provisions. And so we'll reach out to all of the current license holders to make sure that if they wanted to be part of that discussion, that they are aware of it. We are having some issues with Code Red, which is a real disappointment because we reached out to other communities who had worked with Code Red, and none of them seem to have had the same issues that we have had. And so I just want to, acknowledge that and let you know that we're working very hard every day to resolve those issues. And today we had a meeting with them where I think that we had some breakthroughs there so that it should go hopefully easier in the future. We have added 2 new employees in community and economic development over the last week. Dan Driesbach has joined us as a building inspector and plan reviewer. And then just on Monday, Sarah Cowan joined as a part-time administrative assistant. And so we're really looking forward to having them be part of our team. Our community and economic development staff have continued to participate in the EV readiness program as time goes on. So I want to thank Anthony and Zach, who have taken a tremendous amount of time away from their ordinary job responsibilities to help us to be a part of that program. And then Max sent out the email to vote on the groups that we heard here tonight. And then I'd just like to end with a couple of really great things from Public Works. First is our water division tracks our water usage, and every year gives a report on the unaccounted for losses. And I'm really happy to report that in 2023, they're less than 1.5%, which is really an outstanding value in the industry, and it really speaks highly of our water department and Jeremy Barkai's leadership there. And then also we received notice that the Illinois Association of Floodplain and Stormwater Management has named the city of Batavia as its winner of the 2024 Stormwater Management Award. It recognizes an individual or group who have improved stormwater management or reduced urban flood risks through creative engineering, regulatory measures, or other approaches. And they named numerous projects, and probably the highlight of which is the Mahoney Creek detention basin. And just really want to give a shout out to Andrea Pedraza and the rest of the members of our engineering department for providing leadership on those projects. And that's all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I just, as you know, I didn't get here till a little after 8. I was out at the ESDA Emergency Operating Center at the West Side Fire Station because there suddenly was all these reports flowing into us that there was all these tornadoes appearing on radar. And apparently there were some. And as far as I know, there wasn't any real immediate damage of any magnitude in the area. I will tell you that it seems like Geneva got the bad part of it. There was a whole bunch of trees and power losses and other things. I think there was a tree into a house and everything else. And it kind of went along with some of the things that we were being told by the Weather Bureau out there about where the severe storms were tracking to. And one of them gave Batavia, North Aurora, and then they suggested it maybe is between Batavia and Geneva. And the only significant damage that I saw coming back here, believe it or not, was pretty close to the last time we had this same thing happen over there by the West Side Fire Station and the Holy Cross Church. Tonight it was the parking lot of the Jewel. And it blew down there's a shed out there in the parking lot that's being used for building the new Dave's Hot Chicken restaurant. That looked like it was picked up and thrown about 50 feet away and is laying on its side, all crushed up out there. And the other interesting thing was, and I took some pictures, but I don't think they're going to turn out. It was too rainy and messy. But the Jewel had a bunch of their baskets out in the parking lot in those corrals they have. And a couple of those apparently got picked up. And these baskets, which are made out of metal, and we've all used them, is pretty well messed up. I mean, I think Jewel may have lost 20 or 30 baskets out there tonight of just being busted. And then, you know, you almost can see it where it started on the southwest corner of the Geneva, or the Batavia Jewel parking lot, and it went northeast. And that goes along with all this stuff that's happening in Geneva. So I think we were at the beginning of some kind of a high wind or a trail or something. And then somebody sent us at ESDA, I can show it to you. I can't, you'd have to come into my desk and look at it, but somebody sent us a picture of a tornado that they claimed was out on Fabian Parkway by Mill Creek subdivision. And it was a pretty good sized tornado. And I guess it may have get it on here. And if you want to stop by and look at it.
The pictures I got sent from my family.
Did you get sent some?
Was out in Sugar Grove right out by Wabansie. I guess there was a lot of damage. And then another one, which I think it's from the southeast side, it looks like you could see the tornado in that picture right there.
That's it.
And that was, I think, southwest or southeast side, but looking west from up on top of house.
Word we got out at ESDA was out on Fabian Parkway by Mill Creek.
Okay.
So maybe it's a make-up one. Somebody just threw it into
Look, it hit the intersection of Deer Path and Main to the land of Lorne.
Right.
Like those wood bins were across the street.
Yeah, well, you live, I mean, did you
stoplights.
notice a heavy blast of wind or something through there?
Yep.
Yeah, there was obviously, that was.
Yeah, it was
But
scary.
we didn't have any power outages or anything else. It just hit that area right there around you in the Jewel area and went northeast.
All of our power lines are buried, so that was,
Yeah, there was something out in the new subdivision, I guess.
yeah.
So we really lucked out.
Yeah.
Do we have any others? Item 15. Any others? Look for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We have a second. Second by Ewer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
I was talking about
When that one that came through, the